them to report. And if that's not enough, you can report. I want to say that our condolences are absolutely with Diamond Alvarez's family. And I came out because I wanted to personally thank the prosecutors, along with David Mitchum, our first assistant. We're proud of these young lawyers and the work and the emotional commitment that they make to crime victims in this case. So Kim and Steve, thank you. And they can talk to you. Steve will talk to you about the specific facts if you have questions about it. I also want to say that this case is a good example of the way things should work. It was resolved in under 2 years. That's almost a record here in Harris County in homicide cases. And while there was reliance in part on forensics, there was enough and abundance of evidence to bring this case to conclusion. We never use the terms that you hear thrown around about victims and about what they go through. So we don't consider it ever finished for the victim's family, but we wish them good luck and Godspeed. They live in the same neighborhood as the defendant's family. They weren't here today because they reported threatening comments on social media. They had every right to be here today. And so we look for some type of peace in this neighborhood, but understand law enforcement's been informed and they will respond should there be any violence in the neighborhood, just like they did when there was violence in the courtroom earlier in the week. So I want to thank HPD for fast investigation, thorough investigation. The homicide detectives, according to our prosecutors, did a superb job in bringing this killer to justice. You know, I'm going to stop using defendants' names. It's the victim we should remember. Diamond Alvarez was an innocent young woman. Today, justice was achieved for her. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Houston.
I have a quick question, Ms. Ogg. What's going to happen for the family? They're fearing for retaliation. Is there like something that might be due to prevent that from happening?
You know, most people have security around their homes. They have cameras. Their neighbors have cameras. These types of interpersonal conflicts are easily figured out. So let it be a deterrent to anybody thinking about doing each other harm, that you will be caught. And under equal justice, you will be prosecuted.
Can you talk to us about, you referenced the violence in the courtroom the other day, and just your thoughts on it specifically and how the judge reacted today?
Well, I think the judge did what she had to do. She's responsible for the decorum of the courtroom. It was a dangerous situation. So today she prevented any further violence by taking some pretty extreme measures, separating the defendant's family and supporters from everyone else. She gave media some concerns of hers about what should and should not be filmed in a courtroom. I listened. I think that we all have to be aware that we live in really dangerous times and that our courtrooms are where we resolve in a civilized society our differences. Now, murder is not a difference, but the sentencing of a murderer is an act that happens here frequently without violence. And so I think her point was our courtrooms have to remain orderly because our public and our fellow Americans need to have confidence in their judicial system. That's the system that we utilize. We support the judge's efforts in this case.
Steve, can you talk about just how tragic this is, how many times Diamond was shot, and there were a couple, he committed a couple of crimes against her, and there were a couple of charges filed against him, right, for committing crimes against her before this happened?
This is the only charge that was ever filed against Frank De Leon, against Diamond Alvarez. And yes, I mean, the details of the crime are brutal, as D.A. Ogg mentioned. Diamond went out to meet Frank that night. She told her family that she was out to walk her dog because her family knew that Frank was dangerous, and she didn't want her family to know what she was going to go do. Luckily, she told her sister, who she confided in, that she was actually going to meet Frank, and she was using the dog as an excuse. She met with Frank at a park that was maybe about halfway between each of their homes. She was gone for maybe about 20 minutes before the family at Diamond's house heard about 22 gunshots. Moments later, the dog, Peanut, came home, opened the door, covered in Diamond's blood. The family ran out straight to the park where they found her. They tried to give her CPR, but by that time, Diamond was already gone.
Can you explain why we got to a plea deal instead of going to trial?
You know, trials are always unpredictable, and there's a lot of benefits to a plea deal and resolving a case in a timely manner. One of those benefits is that now, finally, again, within 2 years, we got justice for Diamond Alvarez. Another benefit is that he has waived his right to appeal, and so that obviously is a huge factor for us to consider. You know, every case, plea negotiations are typical in most cases, and this is a case that we felt fair. We spoke with the family. They told us that it was fair. They were okay with it, and that's why we proceeded with the plea offer and the plea bargain in this case.
I would like to say something about parole, if I might. The parole process changed in Texas back in the 90s when people served a fraction of their time. Now, violent offenders like this one will serve half their time, and they have since 1994. That's a legal minimum. But it does not guarantee release. The family always retains the right and opportunity to protest that parole. And Crime Stoppers has implemented a wonderful program for crime victims where they can record their opposition should they not be alive or available at the time the defendant becomes eligible for parole. And that way their voices and those who speak for Diamond Alvarez, who can no longer speak for herself, are preserved forever. And that defendant will always have opposition from a family of a murder victim. There's another point about this. You know, murder is not a case where somebody can be held without bail absent other circumstances. We have seen bills before the legislature and supported them that would make murder one of the crimes that a judge could hold someone without bond. And we look forward to that legislation being presented to the Texas legislature again, hopefully this time with different results. Because the family had to live in the same neighborhood as their daughter's murderer and his family. And now, even though he's gone, they're still in the same neighborhood.
Sí, sí. Bueno, los detalles de este caso, como saben todos ustedes, fueron increíble, brutal. Frank de León le disparó a Diamond Alvarez como 22 veces. Diamond salió con su perro Peanut al parque que quedaba al ladito en el mismo área de donde ella vivía y también vivía Frank. Se encontraron en ese parque y después de unos minutos la familia de Diamond escuchó 22 disparos desde la casa de ellos. Después de unos minutos, el perrito Peanut regresó a la casa corriendo con la sangre de Diamond en el pelo del perro. De ahí la familia tuvo que correr al parque a buscar a Diamond. La encontraron ahí y ya estaba muerta. La encontraron, él le había disparado en el frente, en la espalda, por todo su cuerpo. Y se murió ahí en el parque. O sea, estamos contentos con el resultado de este caso. Creo que hay muchos beneficios a tener un caso que se acaba así con un trato en vez de ir a juicio. Con un juicio siempre hay riesgo. Uno nunca sabe exactamente lo que es que va a pasar en un juicio. También en el proceso del juicio hay muchos detalles que salen que son muy fuertes, muy graves, especialmente en un caso así, con 22 balazos que le dieron a Diamond. Cosas así son muy fuertes para la familia, muy duras para la familia que tengan que sentarse y ir a ver lo que pasó. Así que a nosotros, como dije, hablamos con la familia de Diamond la semana pasada. Ellos nos dieron el apoyo para este trato y eso fue la razón que entramos a este trato.
Just for clarification, you guys were able to use his previous record, right? What was his previous record?
He has a clear criminal history. Which is, an important thing to remember that, District Attorney Ogg said, that this can happen in any home, with any age, people with no history. Domestic violence is everywhere, and it's important to be aware of it so that we can put a stop to it. And so it's important for victims, people who know victims, to report it whenever they can.
It is the most common crime that we file. Domestic violence charges are the single most common crime we file in Harris County. Over 15,000 each year. Most years with more than 60 intimate partner homicides. Always brutal and often overkill, like you see, where somebody had to reload. He came clearly with the intent to kill.
Had she broken up with him, was that the reason?
So, essentially, the evidence that we had showed that Frank DeLeon was dating multiple women, or multiple women / children around that age, 16, 17, around his age group. He had another girlfriend. Diamond found out about a week before this happened, or a couple days before this happened, that he had been cheating on her with another woman. Diamond informed the other woman what was happening, and that other woman broke up with Frank. Based on the evidence we have, Frank tried multiple times to get Diamond to take it back, to say that it was a lie. He offered her money to say that, hey, this isn't, say that you made this up, you're ruining my life. And it was very clear from the messages that Diamond said that she stood up for the right thing. She told him, no, you hurt me, you hurt this other person, and this is the truth. We know that at some point the day that Diamond was murdered, there was an arrangement to meet at the park, and that is where Frank ultimately killed her.